one thing that helped me, actually, I have a family, so I said I have 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, my wife. And so I decided to just like get them involved in the film. And 3.5 years ago, before I said yes, we had dinner, sitting at the dinner table and was like, hey guys, this is going to be a big deal for me to get involved with this film. It's like another full-time job. And my kids were like, yes, Dad, let's do it. And so my son, because the movie's a little bit scary for a 7-year-old, now he's 10, but he would tell people, like my son talks to everybody, and we'd be places and he's like, just random guys, like, my dad's making a movie. And it's going to be a little scary for me, but it's going to be a good movie. And he would just like tell people. And then my daughter would send me text with like a picture with, or like leave me notes that would say, I love you, Dad. Like, you got this. I believe in you. And I'm just like, she'd leave in my car before I go to work. And I'm just like crying as I'm driving to work. Like, this is, they're part of this entrepreneurial journey with me.
Derek Dienner.
There we go.
Man, thank you so much for squeezing me into your whirlwind trip down here to Nashville.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Dude, you're a man on the make. I love it. Yeah. And fitting that your company is called Make.
Yeah, it is.
I thought that maybe we could talk about, a number of things, but maybe our point of contact would be how we met.
Yeah.
Which was through our mutual friend, Steven, at Sundance this year.
Yeah.
And I learned in our introductory conversation that you had just filmed a feature. I mean,
Yeah.
And we're looking for a home for it. And I was fascinated by the story you told of not only the story of that is told in the movie, but also the making of the movie and how you went about that. And one of the aims of this podcast is to empower creative people who maybe have a great idea or but who don't exactly know what's possible or how much can be achieved by yourself, or just thinking creatively beyond just the mere telling of the story into like, how do we bring movies to life in this day and age? And to me, you are emblematic of a new generation of filmmakers thinking creatively outside the box in terms of, everything having to do with film, but one of them being financing. Yeah. So maybe let's talk about Brave the Dark.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think meeting you in Sundance this year, Stephen Beer was our mutual friend, and he's always said to me, two things. It's like, if you want to be a player in this game, come to these film festivals where everybody's meeting. You have a lot of kind of synergetic minds. A lot of people are coming to find funding, to get distribution, to show their film. And I've always been able to meet great people through Steven, so I'm really happy that we met, and thanks for having me. But love to dive into Brave the Dark and how we made that, because the story itself is a beautiful, hopeful, inspirational, kind of one of those stories that created momentum for us along the way. But then the behind the scenes story of how it gets made was just as impactful for everybody involved. And it's been my own journey, and Nate, and who is his actual story, and many others' own journey of kind of braving the dark the whole way through this last decade. And I've been involved the last 3 years.
So the story, the beginning of this movie starts 10 years ago.
So the beginning of the making of this movie.
Making of this movie
starts 10 years ago. So, in a quick synopsis of the film, without spoiling the film, it's about a high school teen, 17-year-old, homeless, in and out of trouble. You're really trying to figure out what's going on with this kid. His name's Nate. And now, he has now grown up and is in his 50s, and decided 10 years ago he wanted to share his story, because his high school teacher, Stan Dean, Mr. Dean, saved his life and, adopted him, helped him kind of rebuild his life, and helped him brave the dark in his future. And Stan was he was known in our area. I knew him well. He passed away, unfortunately, 5 years ago, before this movie really took off. But he was just such an impactful person, and everybody that knew him never forgot him. When I was doing the kind of going around the bush here, but when I was doing fundraising for this film, I met a guy that had Stan as a teacher. He's like, oh, I had Stan as a teacher. And he was in his 70s, this individual, potential investor. And I said, oh, when did you have him? Because he taught at Garden Spot High School, a local high school, for like 35 years. He said, I had him 40 years ago. He was literally his first year teaching. I had him for one subject for like half the year. Not even that. It was like a partial year. And I'll never forget him. 45 years ago. Wow. That was the kind of person Stan was. And I feel like that was why I got connected to this, because I realized how impactful, somebody like Stan can have on a homeless kid or on anybody. And we can all, when you watch the film, you can all choose to be the Stan in your community. Or if you're Nate, you can try to find someone like that and not give up hope. So there's two different characters to connect to. But 10 years ago, Nate decided, I want to tell my story. And Stan was really encouraging, like, you need to tell your story. It's a great story.
Nate's the filmmaker, Stan's the teacher.
Stan's the teacher. Yeah. And so Nate literally sat down with one of his friends at his work, John Spencer, and they just started writing. And they were consistent with it. And John just started writing it into a film script format. Decided, like, we're not going to do a book, whatever. Just decided to write it as a film script. And they both worked at a theater, Sight and Sound Theaters, and they were both, really into theater and film. And so they just started writing, and then along the way, just get momentum. But it was a haul until they got the first, script done. It was like, the director now says it's like a Charles Dickens novel. It was like really long. It had so many points of Nate's life, but because Nate is its own story, he's just trying to put it on the paper.
Yeah.
And then it evolved, and there was other producers along the way that came in years, probably 4 years after he started writing. From that point of like the first initial pen to paper, Nate was working on it for almost 4 years. And there was these producers from New Zealand that came along and, believed in it, optioned it. And that's kind of where the ball started rolling. And this was before my involvement. They somehow via introduced the script to Damian Harris, the director, and then Jared Harris, who was the lead. And it just kind of evolved.
Jared Harris is a pretty well-known name.
Yeah.
You might recognize him from Mad Men or Chernobyl. He was the lead in Chernobyl, or he was a lead.
Yeah, he was the lead in Chernobyl, and now in the show Foundation on Apple, in The Crown. I mean, so many. Oh,
that's right. He's in The Crown.
Yeah,
too.
he's a lot in a lot of television and some films as well over the years. Just incredible person, talent. Fell in love with this role. Connected to this role. Was like a cheerleader for Nate. The whole way through, I mean, when he got connected to it, when he got attached to it, he read the script, and his brother was directing it, Damien. And Damien gave him the script like, hey, you should just read it. Give me some notes. This is the project I'm working on, like kind of secretly hoping he would play, Stan. And he fell in love with the idea. But, evolution of this story is like any independent film, it went through, got a tax credit and then had some funding, and then COVID happened. And then all the producers that were part of it internationally got stuck in New Zealand. And so I had met these guys, met the team, met Nate. I knew Nate, for years.
You're from the same area.
I'm from the same area. I went
from
to the same
town?
Same town. I went to the same high school. I went where it takes place. I knew Stan really well in our community. He retired the year that I started high school.
So you personally knew the teacher?
I personally knew the teacher well.
Could you vouch for his
oh my goodness,
exemplary behavior?
Yes, incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
And he actually, when he retired, he did a lot of community theater, and he was a director. My mom runs a community theater called Kavad Performing Arts in our area, and he, the last 8 to 10 years of his life, he was directing there, and many other, independent, small, community theaters. So, his impact was felt in the community. So, I came on board when other producers got stuck in New Zealand, and we have a tax credit. We have an amazing story. We have, this great cast, and Nicholas Hamilton came on board to play Nate, who had just finished, It and Captain Fantastic in a couple of years, and had was really developing as a young actor. And so we had a great core. We just needed the final funding. And I'm a creative. I'm an artist too. I'm a musician. I'm a filmmaker, but I'm first an entrepreneur and a problem solver. And I think that's the shift that I always try to tell other creatives, other musicians, other artists. It's position yourself as an entrepreneur, and think about it as you're problem solving. You're basically trying to create your own client and your own music and your own art, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, that's how I thought about this project. I'm like, I believe that, we could, make a film, and I believe that I could have gotten the funding for this, but I've never, funded a multi-million-dollar film before. Like I've never did that kind of thing. I didn't know, what kind of documentation I need to file with the SEC. Like I didn't know what kind of operating agreements. I knew operating agreements for my business, but I didn't know all the inner workings of raising
Major
funds for millions of dollars to raise funds.
Can I ask what the budget was ultimately?
Yeah, it was, well, I'm a little,
whatever you
yeah,
can,
it was multi-million, multi-million-dollar budget.
Fair.
And it was the biggest film to film in Lancaster County since the movie Witness, which, it's 30 years ago. Harrison Ford back in it's a long time ago.
Won an Academy Award for Best Screenplay.
Yeah. Beautiful film. I mean,
it is good.
It actually still holds up. I watched it again, like when we started this movie, because I kept saying that.
They teach that film in screenwriting courses. It's like cool. Anyway, so
so I went into it thinking, okay, I think it's possible to fundraise. I think it's possible to raise money, because the reason why I thought it was possible, and the reason why I thought I could do it, was because you had this incredible package set up. And I think that's the key when you're making a film. It's like you start with a strong story, script, and then you get a great director, you get a great cast, get a great agent to sell it eventually, or even distributor up front. And you kind of have this package together. And then that allows you to go and find financing. And, I didn't go to traditional, large funds in Los Angeles, or go to Sundance, or go to Cannes, or go to these film festivals to try to find money. I was like, you know what? This is a Lancaster story. I know a lot of business people. I know a lot of influential people in my area, and a lot of them know of this story. They knew Stan, actually. He years ago even performed at our local theater, in downtown Lancaster, 55 years ago. And so many people knew of him, and there was a nostalgia and an energy and a movement behind this film, saying, we want to help tell Stan's story with you. And when I started asking people to say, listen, this is the plan. I really believe in this thing. I'm going all in myself. I have a commercial production company, and we do advertising and production for brands and agencies. And so the last 5 years, we've been getting more into the film space with documentaries, but this was our largest narrative feature. So I was like, I'm going all in with my company. I believe in this story. I believe in Nate and Stan. I believe in the team that we have. I think this thing really has a chance to make an impact and, launch on a global level, to really connect to people. And we didn't know it's a film. You don't know exactly. And we're still in the sales process now. I mean, we're close now, but we're still in the process. The story is not finished on the film.
Yep.
But everybody behind me believed and said, listen, we understand the risk. We understand what you're doing, but we believe in it with you. And I've always said that Stan gave his life for small town USA. That's what New Holland, that's what Lancaster, Pennsylvania is, small town USA. He gave his life for this community. It's time for his story to take the world stage where it deserves. Mm-hmm. And we all had or know of a high school teacher who, gave up so much of his life to teach young kids to take this next step in their careers musically, through theater, through English. And that's how we got a lot of people connected to the story. And, we had our cinematographer, Julio Macat. His first movie was Home Alone. He's been in the business for a bit,
I mean, I've got to say the movie looks like a multi-million-dollar picture.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. The shots, it's really...
Yeah, thank you. We're really proud of it. The composers were, LA based. Then we recorded all the music in the Eastwood lot, on the Warner Brother, stages. That was surreal doing all that. I felt like the whole way through, between the director and the actors and the whole cast and crew, we just got really skilled people that believed in the film with us. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting. When I had dinner, I'm all about when you're getting to know people, sitting down and eating dinner with them, and I built my company and built relationships, coffee to coffee, meal to meal. And when we started the movie, I wanted to sit down, and even though we were in 2021 and COVID and like it was insane with all the restrictions, but we had dinner, like a dinner with Damien and Jared and some other producers and Nick. And I asked them, like, nobody goes out to make a bad movie, right? Nobody goes out and says, I want to make a movie that flops or doesn't connect to their audience or doesn't work. What makes, I was asking them the question, like, what do they think it is that makes a movie great, that makes a movie transcend, people groups and communities? And like, what is it that some movies just connect to more people and it works? Why is that? And they both had different answers. It was interesting because from the director, from Damien's perspective, he said, I think it's important that we all are making the same movie, that we all have the same vision of what this movie is supposed to be. And that was a kind of a great answer from a director's perspective, because that's his role to, bring people into the vision, cast that vision, get people connected, plug in, and make that movie with him. And Jared's answer was, we're in a film is a massive relay race. And everybody has to run their portion of the race the best, because, you can have one person up front drop the ball or drop the baton for a little bit and not really, and that could affect the whole way through. And everybody has to run their piece of the relay race to the very end. And if that happens, then you have a better chance of the film being successful. And, from an actor's perspective, where he can only control one piece of the puzzle, I understand his answer. Mm-hmm. Director can share more of the vision. I think my answer, even though I'm still young in this career, I think my answer is, making a film that has a story that resonates with everybody throughout the whole way, that they can like feel this energy momentum throughout, that transcends when it goes, to the public. Like, I think right now we're already successful, even though we haven't distributed it. We made a movie. It's kind of like Mount Everest to make a movie every time. Mm-hmm. But I think the other component too about it is understanding, like, who is your audience for this film, And I think that is an important piece that creatives sometimes don't want to ask. And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes you just need to make art for art's sake. But if you're getting millions of dollars and you're making a movie and you're getting, for in our case, we had 46 different people invest in this film, from like, 30,000 to over $1 million, a range of investors. And they are behind this. But if I'm ignoring the audience, ignoring who's going to watch this and who cares about it, just to make art for art's sake, that's irresponsible, unless they all know that I'm going in. But that's not what we wanted to do. So understanding the audience is important.
I absolutely agree. And let me just like recap.
Yeah,
what I just heard.
A lot of information there.
It's awesome. It's just a fun exercise for me too, to just make sure I'm hanging in there and understand what you're telling me. One of the striking things about your approach to making this movie was the groundswell of support, as opposed to it coming from the top at the very beginning. Yeah. It's not like some WME signed the script and funded it. It's like, it was like a hometown movie. Yeah, like, we believe this guy touched our lives. Yes. There was a collective effort to honor this person. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that is a pretty promising start to the worthiness of an endeavor. There's a lot of good karma in that. And then from that initial impulse, you raised the money from really people in the community or thereabouts, people who knew Stan. Yeah. And like that. So that's a very unique approach. And I want to get into the nuts and bolts of that a little bit, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. Yeah. Because I think that's really, when you were telling me at dinner, I was just like, oh man, I could take this information. Yeah. Randa and I could take this and use it on our next film. But before we do that, the other thing, what you just said about having an audience in mind when you start out, I totally get that, why you're saying that and how essential it is, when it's not like you're writing a song in your room with a guitar and it's just costing nothing but the guitar you bought and your time. This is like, there's millions of dollars on the line. You've asked this money of people. Every responsible human being would understand implicitly that you have a responsibility to honor that money as faithfully as you can and try to recoup it, and forget honor for a second. Just if you ever want to make another movie, you gotta make money for the first people in the first round. Like, I think about that, that's one of the things that's motivating me with Morse Code, is that we had investors as well. And I want to make a whole bunch more movies. And part of that process is making some money back for the first round of investors. So
there's a great saying that says that the first movie is the hardest to make unless it's terrible, and then the second one's even is harder. Or the first one's hard to make if you don't get their money back like that. I mean, it's hard. The whole process can be challenging. I think the point that I try to make to people that are asking questions about how did you fundraise and how did you make this happen, I think there's a heart connection to this story that mattered to people. And, if you are making a film, find what that is, find that piece that other people can attach to, and can say, hey, you're making a film about, a musician who, a series about a musician who's trying to figure out everything in life. And, what is that piece that someone else is going to say, I care about that just as much as you do. Mm-hmm. I'm I got to make this movie. This movie needs to be made. This series needs to be made, and I'm going to be along for the ride. And a lot of times those people are not found, in New York, or they're not found, people in large cities, with, a lot of, with large funds that they're allocating money, they're getting people knocking on their doors all the time. And I don't think it's a problem to pitch to, to the large agencies or whatever. I mean, you can get funding there potentially, but I really feel like finding, and this is not an easy task, but finding people that are like-minded in the mission, and just connecting to them and helping them help you make this thing possible. When I first sat down, I just, had a couple of key mentors that had walked alongside of me my whole life, really the last decade of my life, and started with them and was like, hey, can I just pitch this film to you and see what you think? And you just plug holes in it, talk to me about what's wrong with this pitch, help me make it better. And then those people actually ended up investing in it and helping me kind of get along, you kind of foothold to foothold, kind of one piece at a time. But then after that initial group of people that you trust, I think going after people that you trust in the beginning, and even if that's just a sibling or whoever, just making a list of people that that might know someone else too. I was fortunate to know a lot of people in my community, but just start with a list and just meet with them. I think calling is good, but I just did the hard thing and just met with people for coffee and for lunch, and, shared the vision, shared the mission. And then we had a little bit of a push because Jared had a short window before, between two seasons of Foundation. And that created an urgency that Jared's I literally have September and October of 2021. Otherwise, I think I can't do this film. I think I'm out. And Damien had some conflicts too. So after I kind of went through my whole list and kind of was just talking to people, I went back and said, hey, I kind of need an answer sooner than later because this is the situation we're in, which helped create an urgency, created it actually helped.
Absolutely. I'm sure it helps. Yeah. Otherwise,
who knows? I mean, that you have
still be working on it.
I know.
You had to do it. I'm attributing this quote to Meryl Streep. It may or may not be true, but she said, when people watch films, they don't watch you on the screen, they watch themselves. And she meant that as a way to tell actors to be cognizant of what they're doing when they're acting. And it's not about you. You're telling a great movie tells the audience a story. And I think that that one line has been so informative for me, not just in movie making but really everything I do, in the sense, okay, that's part one. Part two is everybody is selfish. Everybody's in it for themselves. And the higher up you go financially, the more ruthlessly selfish people are. Cities are famously more selfish places to live because it's hard to live there. It's like time is more valuable. Everything is harder. And that's not wrong. It's just a fact of life. And so the prudent fundraiser or entrepreneur or producer understands that and then frames his ask in the context of what this thing that say that producer is bringing a movie is going to, like, why does this person want to be part of this? What is it doing for them? Yeah. It's like in your case, you were very fortunate because you had a local legend that meant a lot to a lot of people. Yes. And so it's like, there's the sell. Yeah. But as you like maybe we can get into this, as you move away from that community of people who personally knew Stan, it's like, how do you reframe that pitch to a new set of people who don't care about that guy necessarily? They're just like, how am I going to make this money? Like, that's really the question on a big budget level for every endeavor. Yeah.
No, I think it's how are we making something that can connect to an audience that will buy what you're selling, know? But your point is right, is that in life, I mean, someone's only going to come towards you if a little bit, unless family or another reason, but they're only going to come towards you and help with what you're working on if there's something in it for them, or if there's some connection to what they're doing, some reason that makes sense to them to kind of contribute. Just because I like you doesn't mean I'm going to go and like help you with your project, give you money and do this. It has to mean something to me. And like, even the most wealthy people and the most successful people care about a lot of things, and they want to be part of a lot of things. And we're so in our own heads, and we go into every situation thinking, man, what are they saying about me, and what am I doing, and internalizing everything. And like you said, everybody's concerned about themselves. They're not thinking about you at all.
At all.
All they're thinking about is like probably a conversation they had last night or this morning with somebody that made them mad, or whatever, or like. And then you got to interrupt all that stuff. You got to interrupt all the stuff they're on their phone. You got to interrupt everything in their current life and say, what I'm saying to you right now matters, and without your help, we're not going to get to the finish line, and it's not going to be made. And here's the path, and here's why I think this is why I think you would care. And, and that's like a persistence that has to happen. You have to just be consistent and consistent and consistent. And, every morning I woke up and, I wrote down, what I want, what I wanted this film to do and what I want this film to be, and I would just like an idiot, just say it to myself and in the mirror.
Yeah.
And I would not stop every morning and every night. Something about verbalizing it out loud. It's not like this weird voodoo that like all of a sudden, the universe just kind of like, fairy dust. It's what it does is it just tells your body and your brain what actions produce the results that you need to do.
Yes, that is what actual manifesting is. Manifesting isn't some magical potion that happens when you write a thing down and the universe gives it to you.
That's not it.
You just remind yourself every fucking day what you need to do that day to move your vision forward. Yes.
And the hardest thing about what we're talking about right now is that there are long stretches of seasons in life where you have a stake in the ground out here of what you believe to be true, and your reality is here. And you got to live every day in this space here and not in your current reality in order for this to come true. I mean, yes, I am not, talk to my wife and my kids and people around me, like, I went through, I feel like the last 3 years, like hell and back in some ways, was depressed some days, felt like nothing's working, everything's broken. When you're making a movie or when you're doing this, you raise a bunch of money and then you keep spending it until you get to zero at the end. It's the opposite of like running a business with positive cash flow. It's so weird. And you're putting out fire to fire to fire, and you just feel like everybody's mad because you're a producer. You're like, literally, you always have to tell people no. You can never say yes to anybody. And so it's just so frustrating. But yet I believe that this was like going to happen. This was all going to come together. And I still believe that. I still believe this film has tremendous worldwide potential, and we're getting close to distribution now with a couple of different companies that we're very excited about. Sorry, I'm trying to not be vague, but it's hard to really go into specifics. That's right fine.
Now. I don't think the specifics matter.
But we are really close, and it's been It's been a journey, but that is the bottom line, is that there are days that's what manifestation, that is like the hard work and like the plowing of the field and the digging of the wells, where you're digging every day and you don't see water. Mm-hmm. But you have to believe that there's water there. Mm-hmm. And there's moments where I said to my wife, like, am I insane? Mm-hmm. You know, like, am I insane? Just in every entrepreneurial journey that I've had, you teeter on insanity and reality. And you know, you're kind of like in the middle there somewhere, and you got to keep believing, you know, and that is just the hardest thing sometimes.
I mean, it'll drive you to spiritual practice is what it'll do.
It really will.
This conversation is getting me fired up, man.
Yes.
I love this because I can so relate to it. And I have two thoughts. One is, I have a firm conviction that there is no shortage of money in this world for your vision. There is money is just coming out of people's ears.
Yes.
They're looking for a reason to invest it in something. And what they need to see is something beautiful or potentially beautiful, and believe in the person who promises to deliver that thing to them.
Yeah.
And if you are that person, there's not very many people that are like that, because it does take a certain amount of insanity. It's just a ridiculous belief. But if you are that person, there's nothing you can't do.
No, there's nothing.
And I mean, you're that person. And to be honest, I'm that fucking person too.
Yeah.
And Randa and I talk about this all the time. And it's like, you know, you're that person because there's something inside you that just will not quit.
Yeah.
And there's also something inside you that has what I love, the steak analogy.
Yeah.
That you never lose sight of that steak.
Yeah.
Whatever your ridiculous current circumstances are, there's some part of you that still sees it. And it's like, what's my next move, given like everything is stuck right now? I'm frozen. Like there's nothing showing me an opportunity. There's no door opening right now.
Yes.
What's one small thing I can do so that when I go to sleep tonight, I went, okay, I did that much to move this thing slightly forward.
That's exactly
to give it a chance.
right.
You just do that over and over and over again. That's the one part. And then the other part is just like, it's not ever a question whether it's going to happen or not. Like that's for you in this film.
Question that.
Yeah. You were just like, this is going to happen. And once, like, I feel like for me personally, I'm very careful about what I will allow to even have an audience with that little inner sanctum part of me that where I would consider going that hard.
Yeah.
Because once I close, like whatever the analogy is, like put it in my locket and tie it around my neck, man, we are in it to win it, and it's never going to go away. That's how this, Morse code is with that. Like, this show is going to sell. It just, I know it will.
Yes.
This is right now what we're doing is this show on its way to being sold.
Yes.
And so it's like, but you do waver at times.
Oh, yeah.
It's so nice to hear a friend in his own conviction, and you see his vision realizing itself before your very eyes, and that's very infectious. So I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, no, it's no different than lifting weights and building muscle to build strength. When you start doing it, it's terrifying. You don't know how to do it. You're scared. I'm still scared, but you're never not scared. You just do it anyway. And the more you do it, the less you listen to that, and the more that like things start happening that you believe for, and you feel like you have a level of faith to get there, then you start believing it. You start believing it more and more and more. And I'm like blown away sometimes by the things, Nate and I, from the film, we have to write this stuff down, all the crazy things that happened over the past 10 years, because it's a miracle that this film got made. And, it's a miracle. My whole life, I feel like, is a miracle too. So I'm just thankful, try to live in a thankful, grateful place just to be able to do this every day.
Totally. I was talking with a buddy of mine, filmmaker too, really talented guy. And, we were talking about movies, and then we were talking about like the business right now and how it's kind of a bullish market, to say the least, bearish market, to say the least. And he just stops and he's like, dude, you have a baby on the way. You have a love in your life. He's like, you've already won. It's all great. And whatever happens beyond that is gravy.
I know.
It's so true. It's just like perspective is always people that are, goal oriented and like they get a little like I can be that way, can sometimes lose sight of what's around them.
100%.
And all the joy that is ever present. So those two things are hard to hold.
The coolest thing for me about Brave the Dark, I should say one of the coolest things, there's so many areas, is meeting 46 different people that could invest in this film and hearing their journey and having them kind of encourage me. Somebody just said, hey, I'm just going to invest in this because I appreciate your entrepreneurial hustle. Somebody else said, I've seen, I went through a similar thing in a different business completely. Probably all the businesses that people invested from are more stable than the film business, but they all were encouraging and sharing stories, and like they've all been through the ringer to get to this level of success where they can invest in a film. And that was just like energy. Entrepreneurial energy is like oxygen, and it keeps you going and it keeps pushing you when you feel like there's moments where everything just doesn't make sense and everything, getting 30 no's or everything's breaking around you, and you're basically trying to just kind of get to the next day. Your analogy of what you said, or your example of just further the project every day. That's what I was saying about distribution the last year. It's like we're on this journey with the market being not in a great place right now. The theaters people aren't going to them like they used to, and streaming wars and all the things that's happening around us. The buyers aren't what they used to be 5 years ago. But every day I would try to further it in one way or another. And then just take stock of what's around me, and I have 2 kids, 13 and 10, and my wife, and my wife is like the rock around me too. I mean, it's incredible. We have she's my business partner in this whole thing. And, we've been through a lot. 7 years ago, I had colorectal cancer too, and went through cancer and stage 3 and chemo and treatment, everything, and cancer free now and feeling great and healthy. But that put everything into perspective too.
Yeah, I bet it did.
And so it's like the last 7 years have been like, COVID and cancer, and then COVID, and then Brave the Dark, and even just my core business and just adjusting that along the way, and my team and everybody back in Lancaster that's working day to day with me to make everything happen. It's just been so much learning. It feels like a little exhausting, honestly, the last 7 years, but yet I feel very thankful to be alive and to have a finished film we're proud of, and to be on this next phase of this journey. And then I would have encapsulated the whole process of making a film that I care about, so I can keep doing this.
Let's talk about the shares aspect of what you did.
Yeah.
Because that might be helpful for people to think about. The way I understand it is you treated the feature film as like a company with shares, and you sold shares in the film, in this unmade film, to people. So you were able to sell, people could donate different amounts of money to the film in exchange for shares. There's probably like, it's not Indiegogo, but there's a film specific one that
there's Seed and Spark.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of.
And Seed and Spark, I believe that it's mostly donation based. I don't know if they do equity. Maybe they do.
This is equity.
Yeah, more like, that's why it was so important for me to work with Stephen Beer and his whole, law firm at Lewis Bresboy, because I didn't know, what paperwork I needed to like set this up. I knew that, I had an LLC. You start a company, you file it with the state of Pennsylvania, and you have a federal tax ID number, and you do all these things. But then when I'm talking to people and saying like, hey, you want to invest in this film? They're like, yeah, well, what's, give me the offering document, and like, what are the terms, and, what's the budget, and all these things. And I mean, I had some producing partners that helped me to a certain extent, but they were out of, New Zealand. I needed somebody in the States to kind of help build this out. So, I essentially would ask these investors to be part of this, and then whatever percentage they would give, towards the film was their percentage of ownership. So if it's $1 million budget and somebody gives $500,000, they're, they own 50% of the film. And that's the way to do it in this particular case. I mean, there's a lot of different ways of structuring these things, but I think in terms of like the most basic structuring in a narrative film, when you're raising money for equity, you're selling a piece of the company, just like a startup. There's actually a crazy startup stat that I found, that like only like 91%, 92% of startups lose all their money. Only 8% of startups actually become something. And, everybody's talking about investing in startups and doing this and that. But yet it's not 8 to 9%,
High risk, high reward.
High risk. And so the film business is very risky as well. And there's a stat, which I feel like has gotten worse, but 4 years ago, the stat was like 30% of independent films make their money back. I think that might be high now, but that was a stat that was true, in 2020. And so it was like, it's actually less risky to invest in independent film. Plus, there's a mission behind it. My film, there was, not always. And you can be part of the process, understanding films. I mean, that was kind of my pitch to investors was like, you can invest in a startup. It's like, you put your money in there, you see it go away for 10 years and it's 8%, it'll do something. 92%, it won't. You can invest in a film that has a mission behind it, that has this great chance with a great cast and a great team, with 30% chance of making its money back, and maybe more. Again, that was, I think people really connected to that. And that was like that risk reward thing. And everybody understood the risk going into it. But then once they invest that money, when the movie gets distribution now and money starts coming into the company, then the investors get paid back first. And then after they get paid back, they get a 20% return on their money. Then that split becomes 50-50 with the investor group and the producer group. And that's kind of like starts getting into like the waterfall and where the money goes and everything. But that's basically the simplest terms of this agreement.
Is that fairly standard, do you think?
Yeah, that's a standard film like equity agreement. Yes.
So the investors are the first to get their money back all the way, 100%. And then they get another 20%.
Yes.
And then you haven't gotten paid yet, the producer group.
Yeah. We get, there's fees up front for producers in the film.
Right. But
if there's deferred fees or anything that gets paid back right away, if there's any deferred expenses, but yes, so in terms of outside the budget and profit sharing, nobody gets paid in any kind of profit sharing until the investors get paid back.
Another 20. So if it was a $2 million film, and it makes $2 million, $1 million out goes back to the investors, then another $200,000 for their 20%.
Yes.
And then that remaining $800,000 you split between 50-50 between the investors and
producers, which including the producers are like points given to the director, to the actors, or people like that along the way. The other piece that we didn't add in is any kind of P&A or the marketing budget. Yeah. That gets paid back before the investors get paid back. That's like the last money in, the first money out. So any P&A money would get, and again, it's all depending on the structuring of the distribution deal. Sometimes that's included in with the fees. You get a guarantee from the distributor, minimum guarantee and MG. That's not as common for smaller independent films. Like, you might have a director who's super famous, or they might get that, but it's getting less and less.
Just to break this down for the uninitiated, what Derek is saying is P&A is advertisements for your film. So this would be the money that you spend to get people aware of the movie and inclined to go see it. Which, you correct me on this, but to me, what my understanding is that it should be equal to the amount of money that you spend on the actual production. So you make a $2 million movie, you should make that movie for $1 million and spend another $1 million. You
really should.
And that's what that's what major motion pictures do.
Yes.
When they say, let me have a quick side question. When you say like, the newest Marvel movie was made for $100 million. Does that mean, is that including the P&A budget? So that's just means.
So like Avatar, they made it for, 200 and something million. They'll spend 200 and something million on P&A. So they need to make 800 million in order to break even because of the theater split. That theaters are getting whatever 40-50%, so they have to actually bring in box office receipts like 800,000.
So people need 800 million. People need to understand how crazy the movie business is. So you make a movie for what was that, 200 million?
I think Avatar was maybe 250, almost 300. But
we'll say 200 million, and then you have to put another 200 million into the advertisements to get people into the theaters.
Yes.
And then the distribution deal is such that the theaters who are hosting your film are taking 40 to 50%.
They're taking more than that, but we'll
call it 50% for fun.
Math.
So you have to make on a $200 million film, you have to make 200 plus 200 plus the money that you're getting from that from the ticket prices is half of what the ticket price.
You have to make $800 million in box office.
Yeah, $800 million to recoup a $200 million film.
Yes.
So that's why it's very hard to make money in the music business. Also, don't make movies that cost that much money. Is a great word of advice.
Yeah.
Anyone who cares to listen.
Avatar, they have a following. They did it. They made it work. I mean, between Avatar 2 and 3, they were going to spend it had to break $1 billion for Avatar 2 and 3 to be successful. So that's the kind of pressure that's on that film. So it's intense.
Which is why people are making sequels and endless re-sequels. And it's why movies are increasingly being made with an international market in mind, because if you make something like real artsy, I'm trying to think of like Bonfire of the Vanities or some like 80s movie that was like sophisticated and nobody cared about it outside of the West. That's really not done because you're cutting your market in half or a third of what it would be. Avatar has a shot because everybody in China is going to go see it.
Yes. Global market's huge.
So who's the audience for Brave the Dark in your mind, if you were to put it in a sentence?
It's a great question because I think there's, the mission, the reason why Nate wrote this and wanted to make this film was to help people like him, that were homeless, and help families to help like bridge the gap between teenage Nate and like Stan, and help people understand, so like really the biggest audience is actually, like teachers, like teacher groups, like just watch this thing and just weep. They're like, this should be, have to be watched by all teachers because it really helps you understand kids and what they're going through. And every time you take a step towards them, kids that have trauma in their past, they take 2 steps back or 5 steps back. So that was the reason. And I think the challenge can be is like, how big of an audience is that to mobilize for sales and for distribution? But we've had some great success with getting like some large nonprofits involved, that's their mission. And so there's a couple of nonprofits that will get that have millions and millions of followers, that'll get involved in our launch. And that's the exciting part for us, is that mission component. It does really connect to the people Nate wanted it to connect to. But, I think there's nuance too, because distributors are like, is this, a genre film? Is this like, the dramas are very challenging in just the general market. And so they want to kind of classify it further. Like, is this a faith-based film? Is this, like who is going to go out and see this thing? And, it's an intense film. So there's moments of intensity because of Nate's past and what happened, without, revealing too much. But he lived, he was a homeless kid in 1986 and 16 years old and going through all the things he did. So we didn't want to water down the story, and we wanted to really make it impactful. But I think that's the challenge with the film sometimes, is that it's very global, but yet it's a lot of times meaning it has a lot of different audiences and it kind of appeals to many people. But distributors can say, well, it needs to fit in this thing because we're just going to do this thing and plug this thing and then it's going to go. And if it doesn't do that, then we're not going to get behind it.
Is there a theatrical release planned, or is that what
so that's what we're negotiating through now with a couple of different companies, talking with, and that would be a 2025 release at this point. So we were really hoping for this year. There's a huge film slate this year. Some of it is the catch up from COVID, and then with the elections and everything going on this year, there's a lot of distractions. So we've elected to just kind of hold, and that's probably new news for some people if they're listening, but we've been waiting to see what we want to do, and we just really want the time, to launch it the right way with the audiences and get everybody involved.
I've always been curious about this with release dates, theatrical release dates in particular. Like, how granular do you get in terms of looking at the calendar in 2025 and going like, okay, February 1 weekend, okay, that's Super Bowl. That's not when it was, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like and then you can't probably know exactly when the other studios are going to release, or maybe you can, I don't know. But how
you look at it that way. I mean, as an independent film, we're the little guys. So, you see where the majors are going to release their films and their film slate. And then you find a spot that avoids all the big, Super Bowls, all the big things. And then you might have to move if like a Inside Out 3 gets moved, whatever the next Disney film is, Moana, if that gets pushed by a month, then, and over the dates that you're going, then you're going to have to change, because the theaters, they get their biggest revenue from these large, Marvels and big Disney films and these big films that have nostalgia, like the sequels and all that, because people go more to see those things. It's more novel, or it's not novel, it's more nostalgic and all those connection points. So theaters will, add more theaters to their slate, to more screens for those types of films. And hey, they have to figure out how to make revenue work too for the theaters, because they're not like always, doing amazing. So they're just whatever's working at the time, and they'll kind of push out some of the independent films to make room for more theaters,
Sure.
So you have to be really careful. You do look at it, the calendar like that, you do. And you have to know that if you have to move, you have to move.
Is there anything, outside the box creative that you're doing to like tap into the teachers union? Say,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about, not Braveheart, the last Temptation of Christ.
Passion of the Christ?
Yeah, the Passion of the Christ. That was the first, to me, like recent example of a sort of outside the box way of marketing a film.
Yeah, for sure. There was a movie last year, The Sound of Freedom, that was probably the most innovative lately, and they did kind of a pay it forward, where if they wanted to help other people understand the mission of the film and get understand what's happening in our world in human trafficking, you would pay in advance for people to see the film in that theater. And that really worked well. I mean, that film really blew up and did really well. It did, over 250 million. I mean, it's one of those lightning in a bottle situation. You don't always know if that's gonna happen.
Well, they tried to duplicate the success with their next film, and it did not work.
Yeah, they tried. I think it didn't quite work. I think they're still trying to figure out exactly, they have a great kind of guild and a business model that like their audience votes before the films get released, and so they can kind of curate their content with their audience. And that's a very smart new way of thinking to a certain extent. It's like Netflix allowing their subscribers to vote before they invest in a film. It's also like everybody loves being included in the process. Or exactly.
Some people do.
No, exactly.
Really
Exactly. So they do, good job of that. But yeah, I think Sound of Freedom just had this intrigue. There's a lot of drama with some of the conspiracy theories that kind of pushed people to go see it more. But they did.
Yeah, I went and saw it because of Timcast. Like there's a Tim Pool who's he's a commentator guy, and he was just like, what the hell was going on here? Like, what? I'd never even heard of it.
Yeah.
And I actually went to go see it, and I thought it was like an okay movie, but not a great movie. But the story was astounding. I mean, I really, for anybody who's, not familiar with sex trafficking or like, I was like, that's a thing. Like, oh my God, it's a thing. And it was really, quite heartbreaking, but also ultimately I was grateful to be in the know of something that's so serious.
Yeah.
There's nothing really darker than that child, I
know.
So
those filmmakers, waited 5 to 6 years.
Yeah.
It was a journey to get that to the finish line.
Yeah.
So I think there's a grit that's required to do anything big. And I think, that is what's required when you're going through this process, when you're making a film, or when you have a big idea, that takes multiple people to get, any kind of creative idea. When you're having multiple people involved, it's like, what does it become? And does it become what you're proud of? And is it going to be something that you care about enough to keep going with it? And thankfully I have the whole way through with Brave the Dark, every step of the way, even though I think probably my biggest challenge was that I went into it like thinking it was a 5K and it was like a double Ironman, like I'm like, my legs are a little tired, and I think that was just a conditioning thing, because you're not used to it. Wasn't used to the feeling of this. And I've done a lot of big entrepreneurial things in my life, but this was by far the biggest. And I hope to come back a couple years later and say I've done bigger, because you keep wanting to get bigger with your ideas. But I am coming to the point now, really in the last year, of living in peace with the process. I think that's a huge thing for me, because I'm not very patient naturally. I'm like this creative entrepreneur who wants everything to happen yesterday, and so it's hard for me to be patient and to be okay with the process. But taking it in every day and really enjoying that is important. So one thing that helped me, actually, I have a family, so I said I have a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, my wife. And so I decided to just like get them involved in the film. And, 3.5 years ago, before I said yes, we had dinner, sitting at the dinner table, and was like, hey guys, this is going to be a big deal for me to get involved with this film. It's like another full-time job. I'm still having to run the company, although the core team did such a great job during this film, keeping things going. But I have to do this other thing, and explained it to my, at the time, 7-year-old son and 10-year-old daughter, and my wife. And my wife was all in before this conversation. And then,
that wasn't the first she'd heard of it.
She's like, "Wait a minute, what are we doing, Derek?" No, and my kids were like, "Yes, Dad, let's do it." And so my son, because the movie's a little bit scary for a 7-year-old, now he's 10, but he would tell people, like, my son talks to everybody, and we'd be places, and he's like, just random guys, like, my dad's making a movie, and it's gonna be a little scary for me, but it's gonna be a good movie. And he would just like tell people, and then my daughter would send me a text with like a picture with, or like leave me notes that would say, I love you, Dad. Like, you got this. I believe in you. And I'm just like, she'd leave in my car before I go to work, and I'm just like crying as I'm driving to work. Like, this is, they're part of this entrepreneurial journey with me, and they're part of this whole thing of like believing for this thing. And it's not going to go exactly what I believed, planned, but they're going to see some kind of result at the end of this thing that's going to build their faith and their energy. And one other little story is my son is telling me that a kid in his class, he came home from school. He's like, there was a kid in my class. I said, I want to be a basketball player, but I don't know if I want to do it. Like, I don't think I can do it. And then Ethan said, hey, my dad said he's going to make a movie and he's doing it. You can be a basketball player.
Hey, that's beautiful, man. I mean, you've shown your boy that what's possible, and that stuff goes forever.
It's surreal. That's surreal to me. It's amazing.
This can maybe like segue for a second into parenting, because it's a subject I'm interested in, because I'm on the precipice.
Yes.
And like having invited your kids into this process, and not like you were asking them permission, but you were kind of inviting their perspective.
Yeah.
And like, do you guys, and that made them invested, rather than being told, this is what Dad's doing now. It's like, okay, this is what Dad's doing now.
Yeah. I think that's important. I mean, honestly, if my kids would have been super concerned and like freaked out about it, I would have really listened to them. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I would have said no to the film because I believe so much in it, and Ashley and I were both like really in it, but I would have really taken what they said and listened and tried to figure out a path forward, getting their buy-in, because there was months where I was working late or traveling or different things, and they knew why. They didn't even ask Ashley why is Dad not here or whatever. I mean, I was still very involved. I feel like I did a good job overall, but they were part of the process. They were texting me, they've come to set, they were part of the whole process. And so that was super important to me. I feel really thankful. One of my business mentors, Murph Smucker, always told me that, like, he always brought his kids in, to the process, and they'd have like, challenging couple of months, and they'd be around the dinner table and he'd be like, hey, listen, we need more sales, or this needs to happen, or I'm dealing with this, and like let them kind of help him problem solve. And sometimes
here's some ideas, kids.
I know, come on, let's do it. Let's do it.
Need some sales.
But
what do you got?
His kids would say things to him like, Dad, like we obviously believe, like, what do you, and just like blow them away, just like my kid, just blow you away with these kids that don't understand the business side of it, but they just are there and just believing with you, and it's amazing.
When you said that about had your kids, raised serious alarms, you maybe would have still taken the gig, but it would have given you pause. Yeah. One of the things that I've learned in my advanced years is or one thing that's changed for me in a basic way is with regards to my career, in that, like, for so long, this was Corby's music career was priority 1 through 5, and everything else was secondary to that. And my relationships were secondary to that. And that I reaped what I sowed, not all bad. I'm not, but it was a lonely life. And also I was just like, there's nobody that I would like is more important than this thing that I so love and want to have happen.
Yeah.
And, something, in 2019 when my sister passed, that was the beginning of a really seismic change. And now in this, relationship I have with Randa, my wife, of, 3 years. I can't believe that it's gone so fast. Yeah. Like, it's totally different. Like, everything is conditional. And how much it's weird, but like how much freedom that's brought in me in this, like reorienting my priorities to put like my relationship with my partner at the top. And everything else is kind of like second to that. It's been great to like have there be sort of a question mark at the end of everything I propose. I'm not like telling my wife, God, she'd laugh if, like, as if like what I'm going to do. Yeah. And if Randa were like, part of the reason why I don't tour very much, I'm playing some shows next month in Idaho. I can't wait for that. Or this month, I guess, when this airs. I'm not doing it like at all like I used to, because that's not part of our plan for our lives together. Yeah. And so that's been really helpful. And I like the idea of expanding that, not too wide, but like to include, your family's your pod, man. These are your ride or dies. You're in it with them.
Yes.
And like, hey, this is our thing, to the extent that, that's appropriate. I don't know. That's all I wanted to say, mostly about the priority change and like how not putting myself first in my career, which is the same as myself, has been very helpful to other things. It sounds like, as much as you're driven to see this thing through, as I am in my own thing, there's something, it's not all or nothing. It's not, it's still, there's a little perspective there.
Yeah. There's actually a quote from The Greatest Showman that I remember, and I'm going to mess up the actual quote, but basically his wife says to him when he's traveling the world and trying to do all these things, and she says, like, why do you care about the millions to love you out there when you have the ones that mean the most to you here love you here? And it's like, when you have a family and when you have people around you and you have the people that matter to you most, love you, no matter what happens. Like, Randa and Ashley will love me and love you independently, no matter what happens with our endeavors.
Yeah.
And, we're some, as creatives individuals, or as people who, entrepreneurs, try to sometimes find fulfillment in what we create and what we do. And that brings us like joy, or that brings us feeling like we're accomplishing something. And that's okay. But if that trumps, or if that is greater than the love that those people around you have, and that matters more, then you need to kind of shift your priorities. And I think that's, again, a muscle that you have to work on. If you're watching, or if you're listening, you're saying, I naturally feel more drawn to success out there and not to family or the people that are around me that love me. And the people, I'm bad at relationships. Everybody around me wants me more, but all I care about is out there. Well, it's what you're telling yourself every day. And the more that you start believing these truths of like, I'm so driven for money, I'm so driven for success, nothing else matters, you're going to start living that out. And you have to readjust that and start lifting those weights of family and lifting those weights of relationships.
Everything is practice.
Yes.
Everything is practice. Yes. Like getting better at writing is practice. Yes. Getting better at loving is practice. Yeah. It's not something you just say and is.
Yeah. And I'm sitting here right now. The version of myself right now is basically a culmination of the last 6 months of what I've done or what I've practiced. My weight, my mental health, my success. More than 6 months, but really the last 6 months, you can do a lot in 6 months. So, the next 6 months?
Come
What can
to
I
think
do?
of it, you're looking a little better than what I saw in January.
Good. Okay, good.
Man, thank you so much for sharing this perspective and your experience with the new film.
Yeah.
I hope that people got as much out of it as I did. And I hope everybody goes and sees Brave the Dark when it hits theaters in 2025.
Yes, very excited.
Breaking news here, exclusive to the Morse Code Podcast.
Yeah, breaking news is a new story. No, I love talking to you about your journey and our journey and my journey, and I think we're all going through things. We're all trying to do stuff. Everybody has a different expression of that, and like, let's be better friends. That's like a thing that I'm trying to do. Be better friends, be better people, no matter how close your friendship is, and we can all help each other.
I love it. Hey, thanks for watching. Go ahead and click here to like and subscribe. You can click right there to watch another video, or click here to watch a playlist featuring the songs of the Morse Code Podcast. Okay, thank you very much.